All right. Well, there we go. Let's go ahead and jump in. Thank you all for coming. Excited to see you here, and welcome to our tech talk this week on Modzy Basic Plus. This is a brand new offering we just released. We're very excited to tell you more about it. And today, what I thought we'd do for our tech talk is just walk through what's available now with Modzy Basic Plus. So if you are familiar with Modzy, if you've worked with it before, you might know that previously we had a public version of Modzy available for our users to give them access to a set of our publicly available models to play around with and build applications on top of. However, for customers who wanted to deploy their own custom models, you had to be an enterprise customer to get access to that feature. So what we've done is provided a new way to let our customers take advantage of that feature. Individual users can now sign up for a Basic Plus account and actually start deploying models on a hosted instance of Modzy that we make available to customers. And I'm going to show you how that works today. So the cool part of this is that this this paid upgrade, which you can get access to when you log in just by clicking on this Basic Plus link. This will take you over to your profile where you can actually upgrade. You'll see here that I am already a Basic Plus user for $4.99 a month. This provides access to deploying up to 5 of your own models and increases your daily inference limit to 10,000 inferences. So that really increases not only the kind of models you can run and use in the platform, but you can also use all of our other commercial and open source models that are available here in Modzy for a much larger range of uses and applications. So if you want to upgrade and you're not already a Basic Plus user, there's a button over here that you can use to manage your plan. And the first 30 days are free, so you can try it out at no risk. And if you like it, keep going. And if not, just let us know what we can do to make it better. So I'll show you what kind of it is included with this plan and go through a couple of examples of how you might use Modzy Basic Plus. So the first thing we're going to do is take advantage of the fact that we can now deploy our own models here within Modzy. So when you're using Modzy, each kind of element, each model within the platform is accessible via API. So if you take any one individual model, we provide a whole bunch of information about how that model is being used, how it was trained, and then information about how to actually interact with that model via API. When you deploy your own models to Modzy, you get all the same information automatically created. We're basically turning your model directly into a hosted inference endpoint that you can use and weave into web applications, mobile apps, really whatever you'd like. But to do that, there's a little bit of conversion work that usually has to happen. So what we've done is created a set of features that let you really easily import your models into Modzy, kind of no matter how you've trained them, what tools you like to use for model training and experimentation. And so I'm going to show you one specific example using an existing container that I put together. I'll walk you through that, and then we're actually going to deploy the whole model here to Modzy and run some inferences. But you can see we've got support for a whole range of some of the most popular training frameworks. So whether you are a PyTorch user, you've got some Onyx models, you're working in PMML, or you've got other custom algorithms you've written in other languages, C++ or Fortran or something else. We provide full support for letting you take those models and then wrapping them into a container specification we've created that makes it really easy to run those models at scale on Modzy. We also have some early integrations into pipeline tools. So if you want to build a repeatable pipeline to be able to deploy new versions of models as you update your GitHub repo, we can do that too. But what we're going to do today is take a look at using Chassis and an existing container service to actually pull a model directly into the product. So I'm going to create a model here. We're going to call it digits sample model, and I'll show you how this is going to work. And this looks great. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over here and show you how easy it can be to actually create a container image that's ready to run in Modzy. This is a notebook that uses sklearn's logistic regression feature to create a model on their digits data set. So essentially what we're doing here is taking a bunch of images of different letters, handwritten letters, and training a model that can identify what number is written in this format. So training that model takes all of 15 lines of code here, and then what we're doing really simply is creating a little process that will send new data through the model that's been trained, and then return the result. And this is simply the format we're creating to return that result. So with this information written essentially to serve up this model, you can use an open source product called Chassis, open source tool that we've contributed to called Chassis, that will actually deploy that model directly to Docker Hub that you can then import into Modzy. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I ran this previously, created an image called sklearn logistic regression digits image classification, and that's actually up here on Docker Hub. So here we can see this container. There's one tag here, so we got a single image of it. I've only created one version. And one of the easiest ways to import this model into Modzy is to go over here to the tag section and then just copy and paste the docker pull command for the version of the model that you wanna run. So we'll go ahead and copy that, and we're gonna move over to the model import process here within Modzy. So I'm gonna go ahead and submit this pull command, and we've already got the version number right there. So we'll save and continue. And what that's gonna do is start importing the container. So this container image, if we go back here, I think it's about maybe about a gig. Yeah, it's just under 1 gig. So it'll take a little bit to download that. While we're downloading that model, I'll go ahead and select the hardware that we want to run this model on. So every time you run a model in Modzy, you have to select the hardware footprint, basically the hardware resources you want to use for each of these models. For Modzy Basic Plus, you have access to one hardware setting. It provides access to 2 cores and 8 gigs of RAM for any model you want to run. For customers who have more sophisticated, bigger, heavier duty models that require a GPU, awesome, we have full support for GPU in our enterprise product. So if you're working on any use cases where you need a really large model being run, or need access to different hardware settings, perhaps you want to run models on smaller pieces of hardware and break that up, this list is actually configurable in our enterprise version. But here in Modzy Basic, you sort of get access to this standard 2-core, 8 gig of RAM size piece of hardware. So we'll go ahead and save this setting. And then what we're going to do is once the model is downloaded, and the import process is about 50% complete here, what we'll be doing is actually running a test inference against this model. So part of the process of getting a model registered within Modzy and ready for action is we actually do a test of the model to make sure that the model is running correctly, it's returning a result, and that means that the API then that you can use to build apps and pipelines on top of that model is going to work perfectly every time. So while we're waiting to verify the status endpoint and finish the container import, I'm going to show you what that data looks like for this digits model. So I'm actually going to jump over here. And what we see here is basically a big array of data points. So the digits model is based on a set of values that represent essentially the darkness of individual pixels in an 8x8 grid. And so what we're going to do is actually copy all of this data, and this is what we're going to use. Well, in fact, I don't have to copy it because we're going to upload the file, but this is the sample data set that we're going to use to test the model. And what we'll see here is I think there's 5 different representations of numbers here. If you want to see what those actually look like in practice, you can take a look here at this digit data set. So within scikit-learn, you can actually just download this data. It's easily available for anybody. But this is a representation, for instance, I think, if I zoom out, probably of the number 8, I'd have to guess. And so what our model does, essentially, is it looks at all of these individual values of darkness and lightness for each of these pixel spaces, and then tries to make a prediction as to what number it's seeing. So let's go ahead and actually test the model on some sample input data. So I'm going to go over here to select file, and I'm going to grab that digits sample data. That was the same array that we were just looking at a second ago. So by running this data set through the model, we're able to get a bunch of information about the model. We're able to get all of the results, understand how to format the API information so that other users can use this model. And we also do some other stuff behind the scenes, including identifying whether or not the model supports explainability, as well as whether or not it supports drift detection. So by running these inferences through the model, it does kind of the full registration process, and it creates an example that anyone else who wants to use your model can use as kind of a pattern. So here we actually see the results that came back from the model. For this first image, it was the number 5, and the model's very confident, class score of 1 for that particular result. So for all of these examples, we're seeing very, very confident scores and results. So we're going to go ahead and save and continue. We've now imported our model, we've tested the endpoint, we've set the hardware requirements we want to use for this model, and we've tested this model on some sample data, and everything looked good. So I'm going to just upload an image here. Let me go back to the repo that has all this stuff in it. And there we go. And that will become my new model image. So we'll go ahead and save this. And then we can edit documentation. So this can be as detailed as you want, or as streamlined as you want, depending on if you're just doing testing and prototyping. But model that predicts numerical digits from an 8x8 pixel image, 8x8 image. There we go. So that's good enough for me. I'm happy with that level of documentation because we're just doing this for fun. And then you can also add in tags for how folks might be able to find this model. And for Modzy Basic Plus, this will really just be for you, but it's a really helpful way of being able to organize all of your models. So we'll do text. This is a text-based model. This is really for classification. And the subject is, again, language and text. So we'll save, continue that. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So we can go ahead and publish this model. And now this model is ready for us to use as its own API endpoint. So let's go to the model details page for the model that we just deployed. So a couple of things you'll see here. One, this model is currently stopped. It's not running. The container image is there. It's ready to go. But models deployed to Basic Plus are in what we call on-demand mode. So it means that they turn themselves off automatically if they're not being used in order to save resources. So what you can do is essentially, ping this model, and we're going to go ahead and go back. Actually, I think I copied it already. We're going to paste in that same set of input data here to run a test example job. So this test drive setting lets us run data through our model once again. And what you see is this first job is going to take a little bit of time because we actually need to spin up a copy of this model. So this is similar to the concept of auto scaling in the cloud. When you use Basic Plus, your models will be turned off until they're requested, and then they'll spin up, and then they'll stay on for about 5 minutes before they shut themselves down again. So it's a great tool to use for batch processing. Saves a lot of time and money in the cloud. But that first inference can have a little bit of latency to it. So here we see those same results looking really good. If we run another job here, we should be able to see that the response time is a little bit shorter because this engine is already running. So we'll go ahead, wait for a response. Yep, we'll try this one more time just to double check that the model is up and running and continuing to stay online while we do our testing. And there we go. So that's awesome. We were able to take a model, convert it into an image, import it into the platform, and start running it right here within the product. If you want to take a look at the results, we can actually head over here to the operations section in order to see all the inferences that we've run. And what I'm actually going to jump over to next is the section called jobs, which allows you to see all of your past predictions. So we can look at this first one we ran right at 12:46, a couple seconds ago. Total elapsed time for this one, this is the one where the model was spinning up, was 26.5 seconds. So that one had a little bit more latency. but then this last one, total elapsed time was 1.8 seconds. So, significant increase in speed once the model is up and running. So just something to keep in mind when you're using Basic Plus. It's really great for kind of batch processing. Once the model is on, then the real-time results and the latency drops down pretty significantly. So great. Now, what else can you do here? Well, all of the models within Modzy Basic are available to all users, so you can take advantage of any of the models you find here. And one of the benefits of the upgrade to Basic Plus is that you get access to 10,000 inferences a day, compared to the free accounts, which have access to about 500 inferences a day. So if you want to use a model like image-based geolocation that allows you to take in image inputs and process them through a model that will predict where in the world those photos were taken, you could build that into an app and have thousands of inferences within a 24-hour period of time and build an app on top of that. We've got text-based algorithms that you can take advantage of, audio models, imagery models, and some video processing models. So these can be used in conjunction with any of the models that you deploy yourself. So we can see here I've got two models in here. One I did for testing purposes. It's just a little echo model for fun, and then this digit sample that we just submitted. Now for Basic Plus users, you get a maximum of 5 models that you can have hosted at any given time. So if you'd like to add a new model, but you've already have 5 deployed, you'll have to delete one to make space for the new model. But all 5 of those models will be available at any time whenever you submit a request. Now, how might you actually get started using one of these models to build an app or some sort of pipeline? I'll show you a quick example of how to get started, and maybe one of the easiest ways. One of the preferred ways that I like to use Modzy for running inferences kind of programmatically is by creating a project. So I created a project here. I've called it Sentiment Scoring App. And what this project does is basically provides kind of an envelope for all of the inferences, all of the activity related to an app I'm going to build for scoring text using a sentiment analysis model. And then I've also added in a named entity recognition model just for fun. So in addition to scoring the sentiment, we're also able to pull out any interesting entities we find within that text. To use a project, really all you need to do is download an API key. I've already downloaded this key, so I'm good to go here. If you create a new project, all you'll do is press on the download key up here, and that's basically all you need to do to take advantage of a project. Once you have that key, any inferences you run using that key will show up here within this project. So let's take a look at an example of that. I'll pull up my little script over here. And what we've got is a simple sort of Python script I've put together that maybe will turn into a little Flask web app at some point, where you can, after importing a couple of Python packages, you can define your connection to Modzy. So here we're putting in app.modzy.com, and then I'm calling out the API key that I just downloaded from this particular project. So that's been set as an environment variable. And then I can just define the set of inputs that I want to process through this model. So here we've got 4 example tweets that we can go ahead and send over to these 2 models. And by registering these inferences through that API key, all of these requests are going to go straight into the project I just created. So we'll go ahead and run this script right here, and we should see the results return here. Yep, but all those inferences have been submitted. So if we go back to our project, we can actually head back here. We can just see that our daily inference request just increased with those inferences. And we can go to see the specific jobs that were submitted against this model. So I'll actually go ahead here and look at this sentiment analysis result. We can see all 4 of those pieces of text, all 4 of those tweets we just submitted. So for tweet number 1, we can see this was largely scored as neutral and positive in conjunction, which is how this particular sentiment analysis model works. It has 3 classes, and it kind of scores each class independently. And so if you see a result that's some combination of positive and neutral, that's generally positive. If you see a result that's some combination of neutral and negative, it's generally negative. And I can share more details if you're interested on the actual algorithm that's used. And then here we see some of the words that score most strongly with that positive sentiment. So the model saw the word lovely, and because this model supports explainability, we're actually able to return that as part of the result. So that's great. What else can we see here within a project? If we've run enough inferences through a particular model, we can actually set drift configuration and monitor the drift of these models. So our sentiment analysis model, it does support drift. We have not yet run enough inferences in order to actually update this model. So it needs to have a set number of inferences to begin before it has enough of a baseline to calculate how the model's drifting over time. But if you're interested in learning more, you can follow our documentation and learn how to actually set that drift configuration so that it is ready for monitoring over time. And then we also have access to explainability. So moving back over to take a look at that in more detail, we saw there was an explainable result in the actual response returned by the API. But if you want to look at those explanations, you can actually see them here right within the explainability feature set. So we'll see here we've got this inference, my everything, lovely coffee, Starbucks, shopping time. Some sort of use case related to probably brand monitoring for Starbucks, perhaps. So you can see the interface here gives you some tools to actually explore a lot of that explainability data, including word scores, and then you can also get the raw output if you want to visualize or work with this information, let's say in a Jupyter notebook for your own chart. This works for both text-based models, but if you've run any image classification models that support explainability, those are available as well. Let me see if I've got any examples that I've run in the past. Here we go. So our image-based geolocation model also supports explainability. So you can see this inference result here that we submitted to identify where in the world this image was from. It's classified this as London, Europe, based on sort of the pixels within this section of the image. This is incorrect if I recall, and I don't remember where this picture was actually taken, but one of the nice things that you can do is actually include sort of your personal, sort of human-based results in the data set itself, so that in the future, if you've trained and deployed a model, within Modzy, and you see incorrect results, you can log that here, so that in the future, if you'd like to export all of those predictions to use in retraining, you can also include whether or not the prediction was correct. So it gives you kind of a step towards relabeling the production data that you used in your model as part of that retraining process. I think the last thing I wanted to share is that we have a whole set of different dashboard tools that you can use to take advantage of Modzy, play around with the product itself, and then also the one of the most helpful things that we offer is our documentation. So pretty much anything you can do in the product, everything that we looked at today visually using the interface is accessible via API. So every single inference request, API, processing request, project management feature is available via our API reference guide. So check that out. We also have SDKs in JavaScript, Java, Python, Go, as well as CLI to make it a lot easier to work with the product depending on your language of choice. And then if you're interested in getting started, sort of building an application, we have some examples that you can use to get started really quickly. So this is a Python Flask app that, one of our team members built that you can follow along the creation of. And connecting this to your own project, you can build your own sort of sentiment analysis powered application where you can submit text, click on the Analyze button, and it uses Modzy's API to process that text and then return the results. So if this would be a helpful way to get started, you can fork this on GitHub and then customize this application as you need for any other kind of new app that you're interested in building. But there's also some great examples of other apps folks have built. So if you're looking for inspiration, we've got some great samples of things that you can do. Analyzing solar energy score data. We actually have some customers who try to use information from the weather report to predict energy generation from renewable resources, solar panels and wind farms. So this is an example of a model and an app that we built to do kind of a solar score prediction and then add that to a mapping application. We have examples for different bots that you can build, little sentiment sensing Slack bot, for instance, a whole bunch of notebooks that are available for experimentation, and some browser extensions actually that some of our community members have built out. This one in particular is super cool. It does deepfake detection on YouTube videos, so you can just install this extension, and as you're watching a video, click on the little mustachioed man, and it'll classify the likelihood that a given model is actually deepfake, and that takes advantage of the deepfake detection model that we have here within Modzy. So, great place to explore different apps that you can take advantage of within our documentation. Check out the models pane to just see what commercial and open source models are available. And if you don't see something you like, take advantage of our ability to deploy new models and add your own. So that's everything we had. Thank you all so much for the time and for joining us. I hope this was kind of a helpful intro to what's available within Modzy Basic Plus. Really excited to have you all give it a try. Can't wait to see what kinds of new models you're able to add. And if you have questions or need help, don't hesitate to reach out to us on Discord, as well as the Slack team that we just created for Modzy as well. And we'll send resources out for how to access both of those. But we're really excited to work with y'all and see what kind of stuff we built. So thanks again, and we'll be back with you in 2 weeks for our next Tech Talk. Hope you guys have a great afternoon and a great rest of your week. See ya.